Good evening. It's now 6:03, and we'll go ahead and get the meeting started. Just as a reminder for all of our commissioners, when you are speaking, please make sure to unmute your microphone to be heard on the broadcast. The public did not register in advance, can watch the broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel. And for those that are needing Spanish translation services, please dial 720-386-9023 and use the code 104091 star to enter the meeting with translation services.
I'd like to call this regular meeting in the Planning Commission to order. Will staff please do a roll call?
Commissioner Schechter.
Yes, I'm sorry. It's actually kind of hard to hear you.
Oh, I'll restate that. Sorry, I was a little ways from the mic. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Will staff please do a roll call?
Here.
Commissioner Van Heusen.
Present.
Commissioner Bilatoff.
Present.
Commissioner Sanchez.
Present.
Commissioner Eggleston.
Thank you. Present.
One of these days I'll get it right. Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner, you have a quorum.
Would everybody please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We now need to vote on a new chairperson for the Planning Commission. Is anyone interested in serving in that role? I would like to nominate myself if no one else is interested.
I think you should do it, Garrett.
Yeah, I second your nomination.
All right. Can I have a motion for appointing the chair?
I motion to appoint Garrett to the chair.
Second.
Please open electronic voting. The motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstains. Let's see. We now need to vote upon a vice chair for the Planning Commission. Is anyone interested in nominating themselves?
Well, since we have so many people saying yes, if nobody else wants to do it, I'll do it.
Vice chair.
I would like to nominate Rob Schechter.
Thanks.
Do we have a second?
Sure, I second.
Let's see. Please open electronic voting. The motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 noes. Can I have a motion to approve the August 6th meeting minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please open electronic voting. The motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstains. I will open the public hearing. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Actually, I think I'm missing some of the language in the script. Just in terms of, I would like to ask the city attorney to announce the first case, because it's not ordered in the order that I'm used to seeing it.
Yes, Chair. So there's been some changes
Okay.
in the planners or whoever from the city staff is now introducing those items.
Perfect, perfect. Oh, okay, thank you very, very much. I will open the public hearing for this case and ask this is for PUD 23-005, Mile High Greyhound Park. I will open the public hearing for this case and ask the interim planning manager, Heather Vidlock, to please announce the case.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. The City of Commerce City Urban Renewal Authority is requesting approval of the Mile High Greyhound Park PUD zone document, Amendment Number 2, to modify standards for commercial uses within Planning Area B. The subject property is approximately 15.37 acres and located between Elm Street and Highway 2 and between East 62nd Avenue and East 64th Avenue.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask the applicant to come forward to address the commission with the staff to present as followed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Caitlin Quander. I am Special Legal Counsel to the Commerce City Urban Renewal Authority, and I just want to confirm really quickly, Heather, are you doing any fuller presentation, or is it really just what's in your staff report?
I will do a presentation after your presentation.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. So I'll give a little bit more context because I know there's some in hers as well. So the Urban Renewal Authority is a separate quasi-governmental entity from the city, and it was created by the city to acquire and redevelop difficult, blighted infill sites. The board of the Urban Renewal Authority is actually made up of the 9 city council members and then 4 other representatives, someone from the county, the fire district, the school district, and a mayoral appointee. You, most of the time, only see the Urban Renewal Authority rarely when it is proposing a new plan area. And in fact, this body voted on the plan area for Mile High Greyhound Park that we're talking about back in 2018. Here, however, the Urban Renewal Authority owns the bulk of this property. So some history, the Mile High Greyhound Park, which you may be familiar with, it was a greyhound racing park that ended in 2008. At that time, the 65-acre site became abandoned. The Urban Renewal Authority purchased that property in 2011, and the goal is to redevelop it to be a new economic driver. Demolition of the existing kind of Greyhound Park structure happened in 2013, and then there was a Boys and Girls Club that you can see up on the map that was conveyed and donated by the Urban Renewal Authority, about 2.5 acres, that anchors the southeast corner of the redevelopment. Then in 2018, the Urban Renewal Plan was approved. The eastern 40 acres that we are not talking about tonight, those were sold to Del West, and they have been developing a variety of different housing, as you can see, single-family housing, duplexes, townhomes, multifamily, a whole variety. What we're talking about this evening is the portion on the west that the Urban Renewal Authority purposely retained for kind of more specifically targeted commercial redevelopment. As you'll probably hear in the staff report, there was an extensive public process to develop the PUD in 2016. I believe it was approved in 2017 and has been since amended once in 2021. So the PUD, of course, the governing zoning document for development at this site. And the development of the residential has occurred under the PUD, and what you would be considering tonight, and you'll hear a little bit further from DPC shortly, is that they are looking to ask that the Urban Renewal Authority, as the applicant and owner, amend the PUD to add some additional drive-through uses in the blue area that you see in that picture, Phase 1. Just a little more context, the area labeled Woodbridge Hotel, that was also sold recently to a hotel developer, and they actually had their grand opening maybe a month ago, I believe. So that has been developed. And DPC is now under contract with the Urban Renewal Authority. It was the selected developer for that site by the authority. We are under contract since August of 2023 to sell the portion in blue. And then DPC would develop that for commercial uses. So develop that currently vacant, blighted property for commercial uses. They have gone out to the market and for a variety of reasons have really evaluated the site and determined that drive-through uses are needed here. They went back to the board of the authority, and we have had those conversations, and the authority has supported this application for the PUD amendment to pursue those uses so that this can become a successful commercial site. I would also just note that obtaining this PUD amendment is a condition and obligation of the authority under the purchase contract with DPC. They feel they need this amendment in order to be able to acquire and develop the site, but the authority, as the owner, is the applicant tonight. So with that, I will turn it over to DPC to talk just a little bit more about their plans for the site and the drive-through use, and then we'll hear from Heather on the staff report. Just hopefully that answers some questions on who the parties are and who owns the site and why the Urban Renewal Authority is the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. She stole all my thunder. I don't have much to say after.
And if
all
I could
that,
have you
but-
pause for just a minute, if you could state your name and address. For
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Justin Lugin with DPC Companies, and I'm sorry, did you say address?
Yes.
7800 East Union Avenue, Denver, Colorado. That's our corporate headquarters. Appreciate you all seeing us tonight. This is my colleague, Tony Kill. He's going to walk through more of the specifics of the site plan that you see up there. And again, hopefully this isn't too repetitive from what Caitlin just laid out, but I wanted to give a little bit of background on, not quite going back as far as she did, but a little bit about who we are and where we've been with this project. So like I said, we're DPC Development Company. We're a 35-year-old company. We're focused on office, retail, industrial development, and acquisitions. We are based here in Denver. We're right down in the tech center. Our portfolio is all the way across the Front Range and down in Phoenix, Arizona as well. So we have about 2.5 million square feet. We do everything from development to rehab of buildings, and this project is right down the fairway for us for kind of the sweet spot of what we do on the retail side. Caitlin mentioned the timeline, but we specifically, DPC, has been working on Greyhound Park since 2022. I went through our files. We signed the actual letter of intent with the URA in March of 2023. And since that time, we've been aggressively marketing the site. SRS Real Estate Company is our broker, and they have been on this since day one, pushing this out to the market. And for those of you who aren't familiar, SRS is a national platform. They're one of the strongest retail brokers in the country. So we always like to hire the powerhouse that's going to get the job done, and they have done a phenomenal job so far. Their marketing outreach, they do blasts, mailers, they talk to tenants and brokers face to face. We've covered easily 500 different users, from sit-down restaurants to your typical inline retailer strip user, and then literally everything in between. So initially, this plan had a bunch of multi-tenant retail strips. That was what was initially brought to the URA board. After going through this marketing process, I think we're extremely comfortable saying the market has spoken and told us, what is viable today, and that's the plan that you see up there that Tony's going to walk you through. So a little bit on the PUD. On the amendment, we're asking for 2 additional freestanding drive-through uses. And again, Tony will point those out when he gets into it. One is for Chick-fil-A, that's going to be our anchor tenant, and the other is for a Dutch Brothers coffee drive-through. What's important to understand about these tenants is those are, for their size, square foot, they are extremely high revenue grossing tenants. So Chick-fil-A is arguably the highest grossing revenue, call it QSR, quick serve restaurant. And then Dutch Brothers is smaller, but they do a huge volume too. Not only were we trying to solve for a cohesive site plan that works with Del West project and that gives the citizens of Commerce City food and beverage options, but there's also a TIF involved that we are trying to maximize the sales tax revenue. And this site plan that we're working on really does that. Chick-fil-A alone could do up to $10 million a year in revenue. And so when you look at how does that contribute to the TIF, that is extremely important to keep in mind. And that's why we're asking for these PUDs. Users today, like I said, the inline retail users are, they're not near as active. This plan that we have is really kind of the main focus of what's going on retail today. We could point to Northfield, Central Park, Stapleton, and then really all throughout Denver Metro. Any kind of development that is going on is really focused around more of these pad users. We still have historically high construction costs to go vertical for shopping centers. And then I'm sure most of you know 40-year high interest rates. All of that creates a pretty impossible scenario to build any kind of actual multi-tenant strip retail. So where the market is, trying to maximize that TIF, and then just, the activity to, again, give residents uses, that's where the site plan is morphed into. And so that's what you'll see up here. I'll turn it over to Tony. He can get into the nuts and bolts of it, and then we're happy to answer any questions that you guys have, specifics on the site plan or users or anything like that.
Commissioners, thank you for your time. My name is Tony Kill, and I'm with DPC Companies as well. My address is 7800 East Union Avenue in Denver, Colorado. As Justin mentioned, our goal here is to, along with, as you consider the PUD amendment, we thought it'd be useful for you all to consider the site plan that we're proposing to get to add some context to to why we need the PUD amendment. So our goal, is in line with the City of Commerce City's stated goal, which is to create a pedestrian-friendly retail destination with a park-like feel for the surrounding communities. As we go through the slides, I'll show you how we're developing enhanced pedestrian connections from east to west and also around the perimeter of the site. This will help draw the residents from the Del West community to the east, as well as provide opportunities for members of the community to the north and the south. Could we go to slide number 2? Thank you. So this is a blow-up of the site specifically. We're at the southeast corner under the words Lot 1B. There's currently a surface detention pond that was constructed when the hotel was constructed. We're proposing to put that in an underground vault. So it's a structured detention system. For one, it'll eliminate the unsightliness that often comes along with detention ponds, but it also creates a much larger field of parking for the Chick-fil-A restaurant. We think overall that's just going to make it a much more appealing site. Additionally, as you look, the kind of the white dashed lines going east to west, that will be an enhanced pedestrian connection to the Del West community. And on the next slide, we'll go through and I'll explain that to you. Can we go to, I'm sorry, another thing to mention, along with the pedestrian connections and making it pedestrian friendly, we are requiring that each restaurant include a large outdoor patio for outdoor seating, so that, again, it creates that park-like feel. Could we go to the next slide, please? So the illustrations on the upper right and the lower section give you an idea of how the look and the feel will be. The upper right section is that pedestrian connection going to Del West. We're going with a wide sidewalk. We're basically eliminating parking, or eliminating some of the parking that would be in the large parking field, to create a very wide sidewalk with landscaping on each side, create a pedestrian-friendly environment for any people coming from Del West into the site. And from there, we're also extending it around 62nd, up Elm Street to the north. So could we go to slide number 4? So one of the concerns with the PUD amendment has been, the visual impacts to the surrounding areas. So we've discussed with planning, what is required and what can be, what we could provide to mitigate that concern. So what we're proposing here is shifting all the drive-through uses to the perimeter of the site, specifically along 62nd Street, which then again backs to the King Super Center to the south. And then we're enhancing the landscaping with a combination of dense shrubbery at the lower levels and then a canopy of trees above as you go along 62nd. So that combination of enhanced landscaping, berming if necessary, it allows us to keep the drive-through traffic out of the center of the site and at the perimeter, which again helps make it a more pedestrian-friendly development. So those are the highlights that I wanted to present to you. So as Justin mentioned, we'll be around for questions if anything comes up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And then Ms. Vitlock, are you making a presentation?
So this is the requested second amendment to Mile High Greyhound Park PUD. It's at the northwest corner of 62nd Avenue and Elm Street. And the request is to allow two drive-through restaurants with a coffee shop and one financial institution that would have a drive-through. The zoning is PUD, and the future land use designation is mixed-use commercial corridor. The original Mile High Greyhound Park PUD was approved in 2013, and amendment number 1 occurred in 2021, and that was to update the land uses to maximize the use of the land. Amendment number 2 is what's before you tonight, and that will modify the permitted uses in parcel B to allow drive-throughs, should the commission and city council approve it. This aerial map just shows you the location. And this is the zoning map that shows you this area in Mile High Greyhound Park is zoned PUD with surrounding C2 commercial to the south, C2 commercial to the north, and I3 commercial, I3 industrial to the west. Parcel B is the only subject area that's being discussed tonight for this PUD amendment. And this just shows you how Mile High Greyhound Park is broken out, and this is parcel B that's crosshatched. So the proposed land use table would be modified to allow 2 drive-through uses for 2 restaurants or coffee sales and 1 bank or financial institution. And as the applicant indicated, enhanced landscape screening is required to mitigate the visual impacts of that drive-through. This request was reviewed by the Development Review Team and all necessary agencies, including engineering, economic development, environmental, the fire district, and the water and sewer district. Considerations for the commission tonight are that allowing drive-through commercial uses will promote commercial development. Drive-through uses were discouraged in the original vision for Mile High Greyhound Park, but this proposal includes a limitation on the number and location of drive-throughs with the requirement for screening mitigation. And no changes to the PUD besides the land use table are proposed except this proposal for planning area B. The PUD approval criteria are outlined in detail in your staff report. And so I will only go through those if you have specific questions. And with that, if you have any further questions of staff or the applicant, we can address those at this time.
Are there any questions from the commissioners?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
One of the considerations was the drive-through uses that were discouraged. Why were they discouraged in the past? Was it traffic impact? Was it visual? What's changed, I guess?
The goal with the original PUD was that it would be a walkable community, and that's why drive-throughs were discouraged. However, the market is not bearing, and we also have COVID that's changed the paradigm for drive-through restaurants, since most restaurants are considering drive-throughs in a post-COVID era. But it was because it was originally envisioned as just a walkable community. The drive-throughs were not allowed.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So restaurants would be okay on that site, but not drive-through?
As it currently stands with the PUD, yes. And the change in the PUD language is to allow the drive-throughs. That's what's before you tonight.
So just specifically so they can have drive-throughs on
Right.
all the, okay.
Any additional questions? Yes.
I have a couple questions. Sorry. I have a couple questions. This is for staff, I think, within about 2,000 feet, how many drive-throughs do we currently have in that neighborhood?
The King Soopers is directly to the south, and I'm not sure if there's any drive-through restaurants. I don't believe there are in that shopping center.
But 2,000 feet, doesn't that go a
And
little
then,
further than King Soopers?
then there's commercial to the north, and then there's industrial to the west.
So I've counted about 9.
Okay,
So that's why I'm asking. This area has about 9 drive-throughs, and that was on a cursory, just Google map. So we're very close to Taco Bell and McDonald's and Wendy's and Carl's Jr. We have a lot of drive-throughs already in that neighborhood. So that was one of my questions. Can I go on, or?
Sure.
How close is this to the proposed Arts and Culture Center? Is that, on the map, was that parcel B?
there's not a proposed Arts and Culture Center in Mile High Greyhound Park. There's been one discussed in Derby, but it's not an identified parcel yet.
Okay. I think you already answered that this does not meet the original PUD concept for Mile High Greyhound Park. That was one of my questions. Why wasn't it originally allowed to have any of the, hi, sorry.
No,
Did you,
Mr. Chair, if it's okay.
Yes.
I was going to answer your question. I don't know if you could go back a couple of maps. You are correct. The parcel to the north, there have been some, that A up there that is
Yeah.
not part of the PUD amendment. The northern area up there has been very conceptually discussed for a civic use building.
right,
Correct, yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
I believe
you
that
d-
previous question was addressed by Commissioner Eggleston about what is the purpose of, or why was it identified as no drive-throughs to begin with?
Right.
And that's because Mile High Greyhound Park was identified as a walkable community, and so they didn't want to allow drive-throughs.
Thank you. That's all.
Any additional questions? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Engelson.
On the development plan, they only mention Chick-fil-A and Dutch Brothers. But on the development site that they had, there was room for 2 other restaurants? Yeah, on
There
this
we go,
map right
yeah.
here.
So when I had mentioned that Chick-fil-A is kind of our anchor tenant, that's going to be the user that really kicks off the entire development. The pads to the north, so where you see restaurant 1 story, that is contemplated potentially, as you saw in the language, for a financial institution. We've got a sit-down restaurant and a bank that we could potentially put into a freestanding building as a 2-tenant option with drive-through for a financial institution. The 1-story restaurant building, that's going to most likely be the hardest pad for us to move. Once we have kind of our anchor tenants in play, that's going to generate way more activity, but that northernmost pad probably comes further down the road after we, frankly, is probably after we break ground and people actually start seeing restaurants being built. So the progression, and it's always kind of how we saw this, is you start at your corner pad and then we're counterclockwise up to the north, but we don't have any specific uses for that yet, so.
So the Chick-fil-A is going to be in this bottom restaurant, and then the Dutch Brothers is going to be there?
Correct. Chick-fil-A and then
And
Dutch
then you
Brothers.
have future sites for those other 2
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
buildings? Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And I just have one additional question, just
Yeah.
related to this, unless anyone else has questions. As you were relating your information to the market study, as we're looking at this and amending a PUD that would have these constraints for time in memoriam of the parcel. How long was the time frame was this forecast out for? Because development can take a long, long time. So is this something where you're seeing it in the short term, or is this a long-term need that you're seeing from the community, or is this, like, what's driving that? Because I understand, that there's these possible tenants that could come in and establish this now, but then we're looking at something in the long term that this would be the continued state unless it's amended in the future to change these uses.
Yeah.
Or it's going counter to what was originally laid out. I
Right.
think if we heard that might help to,
Well, if I could fully answer that question, I'd
Yes.
be a very rich man, for
Yes.
sure. I think the point of pre and post COVID really did have a massive impact, especially on the restaurant industry. Chick-fil-A, this is going to be their largest format store they do. So this is kind of the best of both worlds, where you get a 5,000-foot full sit-down restaurant. If you put that in context, a Chili's or Applebee's, kind of the I'll call it old school, more traditional sit-down restaurants, they had that same footprint as the Chick-fil-A's doing. So we see that as kind of a combo. But direct answer to your question, after COVID, everybody did the apps, they did the grab and go, the pickup, how do you get through fast? And what restaurants found is they're going to do 20 to even 30% more sales with the drive-through, along with their apps and everything else. So my personal opinion is this is going to be the new norm. It's very challenging to get, especially a restaurant user, to look at a site without a drive-through. It drives too much sales, and they'll pass on a site to say, I'll either wait and let the area mature more, or I'm just going to flat out pass because I can spend my money elsewhere. And so I think long term, I really wouldn't see this changing too much. And again, like I said, with construction costs, interest rates will come down, but the cost to build a strip of what the community was looking for on kind of a walkable scale, that is, $450 a square foot to build, where, 10 years ago, that was $150 a foot. So economically, I don't know what would change that is going to kind of take the lid off of those barriers to construction entry. A Chick-fil-A can justify building their own building because of the sales they do. Sit-down restaurants, they're kind of dying on the vine. You don't see a whole lot of new development in that because their sales are low, and it costs those construction costs. So we do think this is the new norm, and like I said, this is what you're seeing all throughout the Denver metro area. These are the kind of projects that are getting done, and long term, I'm sure things will change, but this feels like it's here to stay for 5, 6, 7 years.
thank you. And Mr. Schechter,
Yeah, thank you. I'm wondering, how did you come up, or how did you calculate the number of parking spaces to allocate, like 100 for Chick-fil-A, for example? It just, in my context, just to let you know, it sounds like a lot to me.
It is, yes.
And I'm wondering, is that a city regulation? It could be, or is that, yeah.
This would be do you know the actual city reg, Tony, by chance? This is going to be way above what the city requires.
Okay.
Chick-fil-A in particular, if you see one of their stores, they not only crank through the drive-through, but again, because this is a large format restaurant, that's going to be, that's about average for a sit-down restaurant. You're going to have, 20 spaces per, is that 20 spaces per 1,000 square feet? So it is a lot, but last thing they want is you show up and you can't find a parking spot, then you're going down the road. So and that's where Tony was saying, we tried to soften and not make, just a concrete jungle with some of these walking paths, a lot of landscaping to try to create more of a park-like feel. But these retailers do demand a lot of parking for sure. So.
We can't construct anything over the detention pond.
Oh, and yeah, that's a good point. So the, where you see the dash line and where it says Lot 1B, as Tony mentioned, we're going to bury that detention pond. You cannot construct anything over a detention pond aside from landscaping and parking. So when the hotel was built, we came along and said, number one, why didn't you put the hotel on the back of the site? But two, you had this detention pond that was in the second most prime piece of real estate. So by burying that, we can at least make it functional, but you can't build on top of it. And that actually worked out well for Chick-fil-A, and that's where they said we'll do our largest format store if we can have the parking over that detention vault.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just for my fellow commission members, I'm not specifically really addressing this application per se, but there is definitely in the U.S. a consensus among some people that cities over-allocate parking spaces and force developers to create too much parking, and that has a lot of deleterious effects. And so, just beginning to sort of have that conversation and thought, it'll be interesting to review what we do here.
Any additional questions? Seeing, none.
So-
thank you. Oh, sorry,
No, I have one
yes.
question. I was just wondering how soon this would be developed and how soon the Chick-fil-A and the Dutch Brothers would open.
How soon can you give us a PUD amendment? Everything is a little bit predicated on that. So Chick-fil-A has already come through the city. They do a 60-day due diligence period where they have an individual come in, and she might have talked to somebody on planning, I would imagine, but she gets into the weeds with, fire, life safety, all that kind of stuff. So they've checked that box. Once we get hopefully get the PUD amendment, we have to do civil drawings, and then I would say we probably have a shovel in the ground to do site work end of first quarter next year, and then we can deliver a pad. The restaurants, these guys all want to get open. They're very bullish on the site, so I do think that they'll, push to get their permits. But I would imagine probably worst case scenario late next year opening for Chick-fil-A and Dutch Brothers. And that all depends on, they say they will move as fast as the city can move, and you guys have been great to work with, but it is give and take of comments and then, the back and forth. But hopefully that's a kind of a broad timeline.
Any additional comments? Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Do any members of the public wish to provide comments on this case? Seeing none. Is there anyone attending virtually tonight who wishes to speak?
No one signed up beforehand, and no one has raised their hand to speak.
Thank you. At this time, I'll now close the public hearing for this case. Is there any additional discussion from the commission? Seeing none, can I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion. I move that the Planning Commission enter a finding that the requested PUD zone document amendment for the property located at the northwest corner of 62nd Avenue and Elm Street, contained in the case PUD 23-005, fails to meet the original PUD concept, and based upon such finding, recommend that the City Council deny the PUD amendment.
Is there a second? Hearing none, may we reconsider another motion for the case?
I move that the Planning Commission enter a finding that the requested PUD zone document amendment for the property located at the northeast corner of East 62nd Avenue and Elm Street, contained in case PUDA 23-0005, meets the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such finding, recommend that the City Council approve the PUD amendment.
Is there a second?
I second.
Having a motion and a second, can we please open electronic voting? The motion passes. 4 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstain. I'd like to congratulate the applicant on the success of their case. I will now open the public hearing for the next case and ask Planner Dalton Guerra to please announce this case.
Case number Z-792-05-24. Farnsworth Group is requesting approval of the One Buckley PUD zone document to amend the existing Cutler property commercial PUD zone document to allow residential uses. The subject property is approximately 31.8 acres located at the northeast corner of East 120th Avenue and Buckley Road.
At this time, I'll ask the applicant to come forward to address the commission with staff presentation to follow.
Hello, I am Emily Martin. I'm the architect from Farnsworth Group that's been working on the One Buckley. My address is 5613 DTC Parkway in Greenwood Village. This is Scott Hall from Alberta Development Partners. His address is 5750 DTC Parkway. As Dalton kind of presented for One Buckley PUD zone document, we are looking to amend the current PUD that's there for Cutler Farms, which is zoned solely for commercial purposes. And we're proposing that we split the property into three different sections, about 15 acres of residential property, 15 acres of commercial property, and like about 4 acres of mixed-use commercial and residential property. If I skip, here we go. This is the main site within context, right at the corner of Buckley Road and 120th Avenue. As you can see, we have the proposed commercial parcel down on the bottom of the site, south end, so that it gets most visibility from Buckley Road and 120th. We've got the residential and commercial property on the northwest end, which will provide a buffer from Buckley Road as it becomes more busy from the residential, which we're placing in the northeast part of the property. We like the residential in the northeast part of the property so that we can still have the process or the site get views of the O'Brien Canal and make it more of an open area. The goal of separating it into each of these three mixed-use types, all adjacent to one another, is to create not just a typical commercial development, which is proposed for the initial Cutler property. What we're hoping for is to connect each of these three uses to build like a more unified community. We're referencing a lot of the community commercial standards in the Commerce City Comprehensive Plan with a focus on the walkability. So on the site with all of the uses next to each other, we're going to integrate each of the site's areas with pathways, parks, and green spaces in order to promote that walkability within the full site, making the whole site accessible for all ages and abilities so that everybody from the residential parcel can come down and use all of the items in the commercial property. Within the commercial property, we're going to focus on retail and restaurants that'll be as well as commercial uses for all of the residents, not just on our land, but in all the surrounding neighborhoods. We're going to create sidewalks that will circle the entire property, as well as a regional trail on the east end that will help connect all of the future developments, as well as the current neighborhood that's on the west side of the site. Within our design guidelines that we've submitted to the city, we have all of our, have created pedestrian-scaled buildings, as well as high-quality materials that will create approachable areas for the residents to come and enjoy. There's currently very little commercial and retail options within a mile of the site. The goal for the commercial zone, with its easy access from Buckley and 120th, will provide a commercial hub for all existing and future residents to meet their day-to-day needs, such as perhaps restaurants or their dentist's office, and keep it in line with the community commercial center criteria. We're hoping that developing the land this way is going to make it desirable for a variety of different uses within the commercial area. These goals will create a more economical, efficient, and inviting use of the land for the local neighboring residents. These connections wouldn't be feasible under the current commercial zoning for Cutler Farms because there are no current standards that will help create the connectivity and desire for the neighborhood. So it will be economical because the people in this area won't have to drive more than a mile for their services. It'll be more efficient, providing an opportunity for the horizontal mixed use that just isn't available if we keep it commercial. We're hoping that keeping this whole area walkable will make it feel inviting to everybody in the area. Do you have anything to add? I don't think so. All right, and with that, I'll leave it to Dalton to.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Dalton Guerra, Senior Planner with the Commerce City Planning Division. Location for this request is at the northeast corner of Buckley Road and East 120th Avenue. Again, it is a PUD amendment to create new planning areas, allow additional commercial land uses, allow residential land uses, and establish bulk and design standards. As mentioned previously, the current zoning is PUD, and the future land use designation is commercial, and it's also been identified as a community commercial center. The original Cutler Farms commercial PUD was approved in 2005. It is currently only one planning area, and it only allows for commercial uses. So this proposed amendment would allow residential in some of those planning areas that they're proposing. Here's a look at the site. It's currently vacant. The property to the south is also vacant. There is Adams County properties to the west, and then E470 and a canal run to the east and the north. Current zoning is PUD. Here's a look at the future land use plan, which shows it as commercial, and that big asterisk is designating it as a community commercial center. So here's the current PUD. One planning area identified as parcel B, designated only for commercial. So all 34 acres is only for commercial uses. And here's the proposal from the applicant. I've kind of color-coded it for you to make it a little easier to identify. So the red is commercial on the hard corner of Buckley and 120th. The yellow is the residential, and the blue is the kind of mixed use area that would allow for both residential and commercial. So planning area A, again, on the hard corner, only allows for commercial uses such as restaurants, office, and retail. Absolutely no residential is permitted. Planning area B, quite the opposite. It's internal to the site. It only allows residential uses, and no commercial uses are permitted. And then planning area C is a combination of both. So this is along the Buckley Road frontage and would allow for both residential and commercial. It also is the only planning area that actually allows for a vertical mixed use product, which would be residential on top and commercial on the ground floor. The request was reviewed by the development review team and all the necessary agencies. Some considerations for the Planning Commission tonight. The current PUD only allows for commercial land uses. The comprehensive plan does designate this area as a community commercial center. High-density residential is an appropriate use, according to the comprehensive plan, within a community commercial center. The commercial planning areas are located along the street frontages. There's a design standards document that goes along with this PUD amendment that would guide the overall design of the future development. And then there are future administrative applications such as subdivision plats and PUD permits that would come along in the future that actually finalize the site layout and the details of this development. The PUD approval criteria have been outlined in your staff reports. Happy to go into any of these individually, but if not, that is the conclusion of staff's presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for staff or the applicant?
How many resident individual units are proposed within the scope of all three of these sections?
Thank you for the question. I'll defer that to the applicant.
Thank you. Because we're proposing for just mix, or for attached residential and detached residential, we won't really know fully how many items will fit in there until we go through our zone lot document,
So to be determined.
to be determined.
Okay. How about businesses? I know that, the way it's situated, you might not know that either, but what type of businesses do you expect? How many, 4, 5?
I think currently we're thinking of zone lotting it for around 6 or 7 lots.
Yeah.
I've got it
Again,
up.
we have not done any, we don't really know marketing. We've done some marketing and we haven't done any leasing or anything like that. So right now, we don't have a certain number. We've got a number of different lots that we could do about 8 different uses, but again, depending upon the uses and then, what size those would be, that we show them as being subdivided at some point, depending upon who comes through and who has interest in our location.
Sure. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
If I may, Commissioner, sorry about that. I just want to follow up on the question. Just to reiterate, there are maximum densities within the planning area, so it kind of gives you an idea of the maximum number of units that there could be, or the minimum as well.
Sure.
Commissioner Schechter.
Yes, thank you. While you're up there, I had a question. You mentioned making it walkable, which sounds great. What does make it walkable mean here in the context of this kind of smallish development? How do you?
I think just with our plans for all of the sidewalks, that's going to connect everything in the smaller streets. So they're all going to be local streets that connect all of it, so that when you're walking from one part of the site to the other, like say you're with your family, you're not going to need to cross over a busier street to get to the restaurants or to the retail items. You'll be able to just take an easier stroll on your bike.
Okay, great. And then and then a comment for the city and you. I'm really happy to hear that that a Zone C area or a C area with the mixed vertical use is part of this. I think that's great for Commerce City. Personally, I've lived in 2 other cities, Portland and Oregon and New York City, where that was common, and I've seen the positive effects, especially reducing crime and other things that come with that kind of zoning. So that's great.
Any additional questions?
Yes, I have additional questions. I'm wondering why you decided to do a mixed use and not make this just all commercial.
I think because you could anywhere have commercial uses, but it doesn't really create the environment that we're proposing with this. What we're kind of hoping for is more of a desirable area to live that's not just your main commercial that anybody could drive to. It's going to make it so that people are drawn to the area because they can be more outside of it more without having to just rely on your car to get from site to site. I know within my experience, when they closed down the streets in the retail area by my house, it really created so much more life in the space because people were able to walk to each of the stores. And when you walk past one, you think about going into a different one instead of just having your main destination in mind that you drive to and then leave. It kind of creates an environment more for abilities for all of the retail and all of the restaurants to be seen that you don't necessarily get from a major commercial area that's just basically a parking lot.
I've seen a lot of growth in the northern region. I've lived up there for 14 years. And I've seen a lot of residential, but not a lot of commercial. And I know that the city has tried to get restaurants up in that area for 5 years, or I don't know how long, it's been a while, and we don't have restaurants up there. We just have drive-throughs.
Yeah.
We have McDonald's and Taco Bell, we have fast food. We don't have a sit-down restaurant, really. Well, we have 2, but smaller ones. But it seems to me like it would be better to have a commercial area there because there's a lot of residential right across the street. The whole Buckley Farms area that has all the townhomes and the short-term housing and the houses behind it, there's a lot of residential right there. And then with you adding the residential to that area, we don't have the infrastructure up there as far as grocery stores and other things like that to be able to support more residential growth. It just keeps growing and growing and growing with residential, and we're not getting the support we need as far as commercial and businesses up there. So that was my one comment. The other comment is that intersection is a really hairy intersection. And so what are you guys gonna do, or what's the city gonna do to be able to make that intersection better so that it's not two lanes? If you drive along Buckley Road going south, right next, adjacent to that property, on a Saturday afternoon or anytime during the week during traffic hour, traffic goes all the way back from 120th all the way back, yes, past E470. And so, and the traffic light there is not very long, and so 6 cars will go, and then it stops, and then, so it's a huge problem with traffic in that area. And I think in order to develop that kind of site, you really need to have a 4-lane road on Buckley and a 4-lane road on 120th. And right now, Buckley and 120th are both 2-lane roads. So that was my other concern. And then I understand how you want to do residential and commercial to provide connectivity within the sites for the people that are going to live there and the businesses that you have, but it doesn't really provide any connectivity for pedestrians to any other part of the city. It's kind of its enclosed little bubble there. So-
Commissioner Engelson, do you have a question?
So that
Do you have a
was-
question? I'm just, do you have, you're making statements, but do you have a question for the applicant or for staff?
Well, I'm wondering how they're going to increase the connectivity to the other parts of Commerce City or the city surrounding it, because it seems like it's in its own little bubble.
So first I'll reach on your traffic comments because I know that's been a big, we've gone back and forth on that a lot because I know the biggest concern is for the safety for all of the traffic and how we're going to prepare for that in the future. We have gone through our various variance requests to make sure that as we enter the site in each of the locations getting into it, we aren't going to make the area less safe. I'm hoping if I could bring up Philip, our traffic engineer, to help kind of speak to the points and how we're helping create it to be a safer area.
Yeah, absolutely. Philip Dunham with Felsberg Holt Molavig. Our address is 6400 South Fiddler's Green Circle, and we're in Suite 1500 there. To address the question about the intersection of Buckley and 120th, it is planned in the future that both of those roadways will be 6-lane facilities. Now, that's like a 20-year plan, but it will likely be a phased approach. The assumption is that they will be 4-laned at some point in the near future, and then the 6-laning will come later. In our traffic study, that intersection is anticipated to have left and right turn lanes at all 4 approaches, and is anticipated to operate at level of service D during those peak hours. So the hope is that, with improvements to that intersection, improvements to the signal timing, that it will operate better than it does currently. Obviously, a much larger facility at that point. And in terms of connectivity, I know that E470 has a planned multi-use path that's there along the eastern, kind of northeastern edge of the property that will help with connectivity from the residential areas down into the commercial, in addition to access through the site itself. So does that address the question you had?
Yes, it does, but I have a question for the city. So if they're going to make that a 4-lane road, how soon is that supposed to happen?
Thank you for your question. We have city engineering staff here to help answer that question. So I'll
And then
defer
how
to.
soon would that development on that, how soon would you guys be developing the property as opposed to when this roads are going to be improved?
So I'll start. I'm Maggie Allison. I'm with the Development Review Engineer Division. For Public Works is doing the project for the 120th widening. It is supposed to go out to bid this fall. I don't know the construction timeline, but it will be widening 120th, and it will go 4 lanes. I think around this site, it will drop down to 2 before it hits the existing Tower Road, but it will improve the capacity on 120th, and that is anticipated, if they get the funding from council, to happen in the next year. Still not a guarantee, but that is the plan. We do have design for it, and it will be going to bid soon. Beyond that, High Plains Parkway, well, Buckley Road will eventually become High Plains Parkway. That's when it will become the 4-lane or the 6-lane principal arterial on the 20-year horizon. Until the developer to the south develops and starts building that out, that is on an unknown timeframe. It could be 10 years, it could be 5. It just depends on when the developer to the south starts building out and we need the additional capacity. So the High Plains Parkway and Buckley Road improvements for overall capacity are on the city's timeline and the developer's timeline, while 120th will hopefully be occurring in the next year.
Okay, so then Buckley would still be, so 120th would be 4 lanes, but Buckley would still be 2 lanes.
Yes.
And then how far does Buckley go up? That's Commerce City, and when does it become Brighton?
I believe right around O'Brien Canal, so
Okay.
they're at the north end of this property. Actually, at this point, Buckley Road has not been annexed into Commerce City. So as part of this project, we would have to have the county petition Commerce City to take ownership of Buckley Road, because that is still Adams County unincorporated at this point.
Okay.
And then Scott, can you please come speak to timing?
A lot of the timing will depend upon when that, the improvements are made on 120th, because we'll have an access point at that end, so we'll have to work in conjunction with the city and when that road and when those improvements are done.
So then you're not going to start development until after the improvements are done to 120?
Well, when we can start in conjunction, I mean, I don't know that there will necessarily be anything there before those improvements are done. We'll have other work that we'll have to do, drainage and other work on site and access roads. But again, those will have to go in conjunction with the expansion of 120th.
Okay.
And then for your concerns with site connectivity, so right now, we have the neighborhood to the west, and so you don't see it on just our PUD plan, but when we do our zone lot, we do plan for having sidewalks that will go along Buckley as well as along 120th, so that the sidewalk can connect to that western development, and then also when other developments around us do get developed, we'll have that connection with them. So it seems like it's on its own now, but as this whole area gets developed, the hope is to keep it connected. We have our entrance on our site, which have connected to 121st Circle on the northwest, so that we can connect into that current neighborhood. And then our entrance into the site off of 120th will align eventually with the development to the south of us, so that the two developments will be connected with each other.
And then be sidewalks that would be able to cross over there as well.
So you're going to put sidewalks on Buckley, on yours, next
Just
to
on
the
our parcel,
development?
right,
Okay.
On our parcel. So
Because
that when-
across it is all properties that are privately owned
Right.
properties that
Right,
are
so,
on acreage.
Yeah, so there's no connection. We are, like I said, on an island essentially right now. When those get developed to the south and other places, the sidewalks will be in place so that you'll be able to connect from those areas once they get developed.
Okay, so you're talking about the south of the property,
Yes.
not to the west?
The west is currently a neighborhood, but if
Yeah.
that development were to ever change, or if there were other site improvements from the city off of Buckley Road or off of 120th, we would have that connection there.
Right. I was just wondering, because you said to the west, and those are all properties on acreage
Individually
that are
owned, yeah.
individually owned.
Right.
So there would be no reason for anybody to go over there.
Well, unless you live
Unless you live
there.
Right.
Yeah, but
well,
again,
that
that
makes
wouldn't, but we couldn't do anything on that side.
Right, okay. All right, I think that's all my questions.
Commissioner Sanchez, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I just had a general question, timing residential versus commercial. I don't want to make any assumptions. So would you lead with commercial and eventually shift to residential, or doing it all one whack, or what's the plan in general?
The plan would be to do it all in conjunction. So we'd have to put interior roads in to access everything, so that would be, hopefully, they would all be going at the same time.
Thank you.
I have another question. For the residential, is it going to be single-family detached homes, or it's going to be apartment complexes or townhomes, or?
We're currently proposing a mix of both so that there's different variety of uses for everybody. So we're not strictly saying this is the one type of family or the one type of individual that will want to live here. We're trying to make it open for everyone.
Okay. So it's going to be single-family homes and townhomes and apartments?
Right now, the plan would be to do kind of a combination of everything. Most of the apartments would be on if we did the multi-story residential, commercial on the parcel, residential, commercial estate.
So could that ever change and it'd all be apartments?
I'm sorry,
So what I'm asking is, right now, you're saying that it could be single-family homes and apartments and townhomes, so it would
on
be
the
mixed.
residential, on the yellow parcel B.
Right. So what I'm asking is, right now, that's what you're saying, but would there ever be a change where it would go from having single-family homes and apartments and townhomes to just apartments?
That would not be our plan, no, that's not our plan.
No? Okay. It's just that it says residential, but we don't know what kind of residential. That's why I was asking.
In our PUD zone document, we do have our table of land uses that does leave it open to everything, just so we can, but the desire for the community is to not just go, I know your concern is probably just to add a lot more apartments to the site that there's no more
Right.
capacity for, but that's not the desire for the development, no.
So I do have a question relative to that, just on your use tables. And not understanding is that in our purview that we're looking at the PUD document and the use tables and what's spelled out in those documents. One thing that I did notice in all 4 zones is a big adjustment to allowable height. Is that, in Area B, the allowable height for multifamily building, to Commissioner Engelson's point, that it would technically allow a 175-foot tall apartment building, mixed-use building, so a 12, 13-story tall building. In apartment, or in planning area A, you're requesting a 90-foot high limit, and in area C, it's a 75-foot height limit, if I can spit it out. Or currently, the existing PUD allows a 50-foot height limit. So I guess it's a question for you, but then also for staff, and noting what's the occupancy or the zoning near this site. It seems that those allowable heights are way beyond the means of other adjacent properties. Mr. Guerra, could you speak to that?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. To the west is Adams County residential, so certainly it would exceed those heights. To the south is Buckley Crossing. Off the top of my head, I don't know what the maximum building heights are for that PUD specifically. But those would be the 2 adjacent properties. Just for context as well, our straight zone districts in commercial and industrial, do you allow up to 50 and 75 feet maximum building heights?
But 175 is well beyond the pale of normal zoning within the city.
Yes,
Is that
it is.
correct?
Yes, it is.
So I don't know if that's a typo in your use table, or is that what you're actually requesting?
I think that's a typo.
I think it's a typo.
Yeah, I was wondering that
It was
because it
meant
seemed
to
like
be
there was an extra
75.
100, and I'm just curious
175
because
feet
it's
is a pretty tall.
that you're asking for 3 times the height and a
Yeah,
very,
that's-
very
I
small, so
think
you would have
that's-
a.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that was a mistake. on my part.
And I apologize for that. Our intention was to keep it within the
Consistent
standards.
within the standards,
Yeah.
yeah. It wasn't to be triple the size.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
Yeah, I have a question for the city. For 15 acres, what's the limit for residential? Isn't it 6 to 9 per half acre?
Just to clarify, you're asking about the density regulations for planning area
Yes.
B specifically?
Yeah, the residential area, yes.
Absolutely. So in their zone document, they have it broken down by housing product. And so within planning area B, multifamily would be a maximum density of 25 dwelling units per acre. Single-family detached would be a maximum of 12 dwelling units per acre. Single-family attached would be a maximum of 25 as well, and multifamily attached would also be a maximum of 25 dwelling units per acre. And that's all outlined within the PUD zone document, within the development standards on sheet 6.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, just for context, could you give me the approximate size of it, the single-family homes per acre with the information you just provided?
That's a good question. Does the applicant have an approximate size of the units?
And you could just do that for the single family. I just,
Emily?
I'm not calculating it in my head real well right now.
Do you have an idea about the average size of a unit for a single family?
Of the unit for,
We, let me look at my table. We have a minimum of 900 square feet. We did not put in a maximum, but we do have, yeah, we just put in minimum square footages for the lot size and for the homes. So we have a minimum of 3,500 square feet for the lot size and 900 square feet for the home itself, for the livable area.
And I'll add on to that as well. In their design standards document, which is a separate document from the PUD zone document, which will help guide the development, it states that the single-family detached would range anywhere from 900 square feet to 3,500 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you for your responses.
Thank you.
Do any members of the public wish to provide comments on this case? Seeing none, is there anyone attending virtually tonight who wishes to speak?
No one signed up beforehand, and no one has raised their hand to speak.
Thank you. At this time, I will now close the public hearing for this case. Is there any additional discussion from the commission? Commissioner Schechter.
Yeah, maybe, I just had a couple thoughts. Ms. Eggleston, from your comments, take it what you will. One of the things you mentioned was grocery, and actually, we live at 104th and Tower, and we drive up past this location to go to the grocery, to get groceries at Target. So I could see at this location, that would actually be a pretty easy drive. Let me see. Oh yeah, and those properties to the west, those are basically it's all like horse ranches, and they do horse riding lessons. And just going back and forth past that road, we've seen groups of kids and people. So there's a context. That's what goes on there. So it's actually actually kind of commercial. It's county land; they can do what they like. So it's kind of nice, and it's interesting that they didn't come here to speak on this. Maybe they feel pretty safe; they'll be able to continue doing that for a long time. They're on county land, you know. I don't know, but that's interesting. And Commissioner Adelson, I was just wondering, you were asking about why is it not just all commercial? Were you like thinking that it'd be better if it was all commercial or better if it was all residential? Is that what you were asking about, or?
Well, I just think that we need a lot more commercial or businesses in the northern range. And I thought this would be a great place to have all commercial,
Okay, got it.
because you're going to have residential right next to E470.
So, yeah, so my take, I personally, I think, well, here, so my context is I grew up as a kid in Indianapolis, and Indianapolis downtown at night was like a ghost town and high crime, and it was surrounded by like gutted buildings. And the thing I noticed right there was that, well, there's nobody out. There's nobody there. It's because it's only zoned business, like lots of Midwest towns are. And then moving to Portland, Oregon, I saw how there are these neighborhoods, downtown Hawthorne Division, it goes Northwest 23rd, it goes on and on and on. And these are all like, each one of these has its own character, and these are attractions that people go to because there's like wine bars and grocery stores, everything you want with like nice apartments above. So I could see something like this would actually be a destination. I'm really glad to see the vertical zoning. That's just my take on it, you know? And of course, it's like a very limited sample, just one person's experience. So I could see this being very popular because also easy access to the highway. Yeah, the one thing I didn't hear was like really, maybe I missed it. It's easy, I could have missed it. Like the city's plans for ensuring that there's good traffic flow there, because this is how we all go from Reunion up to Prairie Center and back. And at rush hour, that one intersection there, it is kind of a bottleneck already. So I don't know, maybe the city has like sort of a plan, but you know, we just didn't hear it, or.
Yeah, we discussed it.
Okay, yeah, we discussed it. Okay, thanks.
Any other points of discussion? Seeing none, can I have a motion on this case?
Yeah, I move the Planning Commission enter a finding that the requested PUD zone document amendment for the property located at the northeast corner of Buckley Road and East 120th Avenue, contained in case Z792-05-24, meets the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such finding, recommend that the City Council approve the PUD amendment.
I second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Schechter and a second by Commissioner Van Huzen. Is there any additional discussion? The only point that I would like to add to the motion, and I guess we would need to amend the motion, send this motion and have an additional motion to change the use tables, or to ensure that the applicant updates the use tables to note the building height to the maximum heights. I don't know if there's how the rest of the commissioners feel about that, just to have that noted.
Basically a correction to match the intent.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a great condition. Procedurally, how would we do that?
Is that a friendly amendment?
Yeah, it's a friendly amendment to amend the motion, and if the seconder accepts, then you can vote on that as a comprehensive amendment.
Seconder accepts it, yes.
Seeing nodded and yeses and shaking of heads, can we open electronic voting on the motion? The motion passes, 4 yeses, 1 no, and 0 abstains. Congratulations to the applicant. I will open the final public hearing of this evening and ask the Deputy Economic Development Director, Brian I'm sorry, Mr. Pafetopoulos, to please announce this item. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
No problem. Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Brian Fetterplace. I'm the Deputy Director of Economic Development, and my sole purpose here this evening is just to introduce our consultant, Community Attributes Incorporated. We have Elliot Weiss with CIA here to walk you through where we are with the current development of our multi-year economic development strategic plan. So with that, I will invite Elliot to come up and give his presentation.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for commissioners for having me. My name is Elliot Weiss. I work for a company called Community Attributes Incorporated. We are based out of Seattle, Washington, but we have a local office here in Denver, which I lead. And we've been working on this project since about this time last year. It's been about 1 year in the making. There's been a really robust process. And I know that while I've been in front of Commerce City's Planning Commission for this project before, there are a few of you that may not have been here at that time. So while my slides may not touch on it, I'm happy to talk more about what that process entailed and how we got from A to Z. But we are here to discuss what we believe to be the final economic development strategic plan for Commerce City, and we are seeking your recommendation to City Council for approval. I will move quickly through this presentation. It's a lot of text, so we can always go back to any slides that you'd like to spend more time with. We arrange this content hierarchically, starting with a vision at the top, which is Commerce City's aspiration for its economic future, then goals, which are limited in number so that you have strategic focus, followed by strategies, which are, we define them as anyway, approaches to meeting a goal, and then actions, which are the really tactical parts that city staff can take on and kind of place into a work plan in the coming years. So I will start with that vision and goals, go to strategies and actions, and then we'll end on key performance indicators that we have worked with staff to determine so that we can track progress toward implementation. The vision statement, as vetted by the community, by Planning Commission, by Council, reads as, Commerce City is an inclusive community where innovative and enterprising residents find access to boundless opportunity. Situated between bustling city and open prairie, our businesses are closely connected to the region, and our residents have access to places to shop, dine, and play at their fingertips. From local shops to global industry, we bring a collaborative and can-do attitude to our approachable and energetic city. It's notable that this should, and we believe does, align with City Council's goal for economic development, which is that the City of Commerce City will promote a balanced, thriving, and inclusive city economy that cultivates, attracts, and retains business. But this vision statement goes a little bit farther to articulate how we would do this. What does it look like in 10, 20, 30 years if Commerce City is successful in implementing this strategic plan and thereafter continuing to build on the strategic plan? What does the city's economy look like? And so it's aspirational in nature, but we're trying to lay out for all who read this where the city is going. We have 5 goals that we've landed on through this process. The first is complete community, become a complete and inclusive community where all residents have access to places to shop, dine, and play. The second is enterprise and opportunity, improve access to economic opportunity for residents and businesses. The third, we've sort of titled approachable, develop a reputation as a leading city to live, work, visit, and stay within the metro area. The fourth is innovative and industrious, grow and innovate within existing legacy industries, so those things that you currently are strong in, and new opportunity sectors alike. And goal 5, collaborative and can-do, foster a high-functioning economic development ecosystem. So these are those text-heavy slides. As I said, I'll move quickly and we can come back if there are any specific actions that we want to unpack. I'm happy to talk about how we arrived at some of these or what some of the input was from the community that led us to this point. But the first strategy under complete community is to analyze retail needs and compete for retail investment. We know that that's been an emphasis in a lot of community conversations. We heard it in some of those discussions around the previous 2 PUD amendments. it clearly came through in the feedback that we received, and we wanted to recognize that in the Economic Development Strategic Plan. The second strategy under this first goal is to support existing Commerce City businesses and neighborhood business districts in meeting the needs of local residents. We know that Commerce City has a really rich mix of locally owned small businesses. There are several historic neighborhoods that have been stitched together in this city, and they each have their own unique commercial identities, and we want to make sure that the city is doing what it can to support and enhance those. This is a continuation of 1.2. 1.3 is to establish Commerce City as a regional hub for both community and business. So that's what can Commerce City do to make sure that they are bringing people in and maintaining a sort of central location, economically speaking, for folks who are running businesses, running nonprofits, leading different institutions. It's this idea that Commerce City has a certain geographic centrality within the region, that Commerce City is very strategically placed based on regional investments in infrastructure, and how can the city capitalize on that to make sure that it's also central in terms of economic impact and economic function. This is, again, a continuation of 1.3 with additional action steps. We move on to goal number 2, which is enterprise and opportunity. This is about creating opportunities for upward mobility for residents and for business owners, opportunities to scale businesses. Strategy 2.1 is to increase access to tools that promote upward mobility, including skills training, education, apprenticeship, and mentorship programs, and others as appropriate. And strategy 2.2 is to align regulatory processes, procedures, and enforcement, as well as messaging about Commerce City's business climate with the goal of improving access to opportunity. A continuation on this slide of 2.2. Those are the only 2 strategies that nest under that second goal. The third goal, approachable, develop a reputation as a leading city to live, work, visit, and stay within the metro area, really responds to this idea that we need to enhance what the public perception is regionally of what Commerce City can offer and highlight the assets that Commerce City does have and is continuing to develop. Strategy 3.1, prioritize strategic public realm improvements that increase visitation and increase commerce. So there are some placemaking related items here. 3.2, ensure that Commerce City projects a safe and welcoming image, and projecting that image is sort of part perception and part reality, right? Make sure that it is in fact a safe and welcoming place, and then also make sure that that is the regional understanding of what Commerce City has to offer. And then it's on to goal 4, innovative and industrious. You will see in this both some industry sectors that Commerce City hopes to do a little more in, but also those that have traditionally been strong in Commerce City, and maybe we're looking to the future of what those can be and how the city can support that. 4.1 is to analyze retail needs and compete for more retail investment. 4.2 is to help companies in the transportation, distribution, and logistics sector. You've got FedEx, and you've got UPS, and you've got the U.S. Postal Service. What can the city do to help them pioneer an innovative future for that sector? Continuation of 4.2 at the top of this slide, and then 4.3 is to support growth opportunities in industries or practices that meet the city's interest in clean and green. And that's feedback that we received from the public. It's also feedback that we recognize you heard a lot over your comp plan update process, which has been going on for the past few years. So it's something we thought was important to recognize here, that it's an area that the city aspires to grow. 4.4 is to target businesses, organizations, and institutions in healthcare and education as appropriate for Commerce City's demographic and economic characteristics. The city's been growing very rapidly. Some of that is new construction. Some of it historically over the last few decades has been annexation, but it has one of the higher growth rates over the last couple decades of any of the cities in the metro area. And as that happens, you're going to have a higher degree of need for these types of services. These are also institutional jobs that tend to pay pretty good wages. And so it was an area that was sort of suggested as a priority in some of the feedback that we received. And then 4.5 is to establish policies and programs that facilitate growth for businesses across all industry sectors. So this one is specific to the sector, but it sort of recognizes there are certain things like business services or land availability or appropriate zoning regulations for those available lands that will help generate all forms of economic activity. This slide is just a continuation of 4.5. We move on to Goal 5, the fifth and final. Collaborative and can-do, foster a high-functioning economic development ecosystem. 5.1 is to create systems and standards for economic development roles, responsibilities, and relationships. This is just creating a more robust process for ED staff to sort of know what it is that's going to move the needle or make an impact with your partners in the private sector or other sort of organizations that are part of the economic development ecosystem. And 5.2 is to consider more tailored or targeted approaches to regulating new development that would help Commerce City achieve its vision. And this one is sort of iterative in nature in the sense that what we're asking is for the city to continue to take feedback from your partners in the private sector, to listen to their feedback earnestly and to adjust processes as appropriate if current processes aren't getting the intended results. So it's just about sort of a collaborative relationship in that regard. So we move on to the final section of my presentation before we have some discussion and Q&A, and these are just the key performance indicators. We include these in the Economic Development Strategic Plan so that staff can monitor data as they work to implement all of the actions you've seen on the previous slides, and make sure that we are tracking in the right direction, decide that if we need to, we can course correct, we can reprioritize, we can reallocate resources. There are enough actions in this plan to keep staff busy for several years, and economic conditions change over several years too, which is why we suggest typically sort of a 5-year time horizon for implementation of these. If you're doing a good job, you'll have crossed a number of them off within that time frame. And if economic conditions have changed, there may be some that are no longer appropriate. And these indicators can help inform decisions about whether to stay on the current path or to pivot. So I won't read all of them, but with Complete Community, which had a big emphasis on local shopping and dining options, you see things like sales tax collections, value of permitted investments, available sites listed on Redefining Commerce. So those are the sorts of things that staff could track. Under Enterprise and Opportunity, new jobs created, and you can even break that out by type of business or industry sector in which those jobs are created. Growth in median household income. I said that Goal 2 was largely about creating opportunities for upward mobility or for scaling businesses, and in theory, if you're succeeding on that front, that would be reflected in the household income data to the extent that these are residents of Commerce City. Participation in various programs. They may be programs offered not by the city, but by your partners, so that requires that collaborative relationship with those economic development partners. And permit review time. Under the third goal, approachable, building occupancy rates, so just making sure that you're monitoring vacancies in a very current manner. Growth in residential population and households, that's just looking at, are people still desiring to live in Commerce City? Do we continue to see these high growth rates relative to our peers in the region? Amount of budgeted or leveraged funds for placemaking, so what's the impact of the dollars that we are investing in these types of programs? And then engagement with the city's social media presence. Are people following along in Commerce City's story? Are they listening to what staff are trying to publicize? For innovative and industrious, growth in sales tax collections, that is a repeat, but an intentional repeat because the retail sector was represented in Goal 4 as well. Growth in property tax base, which is just a measure of whether or not you're getting additional development activity, and the number of engagements by staff. So staff could track who they're talking to, what kinds of conversations they're having, and whether or not directionally that's moving where you would like it to go. And then finally, collaborative and can-do, foster a high-functioning economic development ecosystem. We have new business openings, the number of partners participating in ElevateCommerce.com, and again, as a repeat, the number of engagements with ecosystem partners. So just tracking those touches between staff and the folks who specialize in workforce development, or site selectors, the folks who specialize in business recruitment, those sorts of things. And so that is my presentation. I apologize for the lack of fancy graphics, but we've worked hard to get here over the last year, and we are eager to head to City Council in October. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Yes.
So I have a question. As you know, we have very different needs in the south than we do the north, and that's something that I know you guys are looking at because I do follow you on social media. So I understand the outreaches you've done to the southern side that's providing more services, more jobs, and so forth. But in the north side, where the rest of my family lives, that seems to be a real need. There's a bigger need for everyday retail. There's a bigger need for jobs, especially for those who are in their teens, early 20s. You know, they don't own their own home, but they need a job. So in order to find employment, they have to leave the northern areas. So I like the fact that you're trying to break it down by regions too, because it's not Commerce City as a whole. Different parts of our city have different needs currently, and I'm glad to see that that's something you're going to continue to focus on.
Yeah, I think that came through loud and clear. I will say, because I didn't have a slide that sort of summarized the engagement program, we took care to have meetings in different formats and different locations to make it convenient for folks across all parts of Commerce City to participate. So we did hear some of those different priorities depending on where we were. But we've tried to write the strategies in such a way that they are sufficiently flexible to either implement something that is appropriate in one area only in that area, or to interpret whether or not you should sort of throttle up, throttle down a specific strategy for a specific area, right? That you have some flexibility there in how you choose to implement these things.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Sanchez?
Just a simple, I guess, who's responsible for monitoring the plan? I mean, does this sit with the city manager, or how do we maintain who's monitoring the plan and working on it going forward?
I will take a first pass, and then I'd be happy to defer to city staff. But economic development is, of course, run out of the city manager's office. So we have been working primarily with Brian, who introduced me as he was serving as Economic Development Director on an interim basis over the course of most of this project. But in terms of future roles and responsibilities, I would, of course, let staff speak to that.
Good evening. I'm Garrett Anderson, the Economic Development Director. Just started a couple months ago, so I haven't met most of you yet. I've met you, Scott. Thanks for introducing yourself. Yeah, so that'll be my primary responsibility is monitoring the plan, assigning staff to various goals and actions that are available in the plan, and keeping that a focus of our department. So we've got the plan that's before you now, and then we also have the citywide strategic plan, which Chapter 2 deals primarily with economic development. And much of the KPIs are designed to be reporting for both of these plans at the same time. So these will also flow into the reporting that the city council expects for the city manager and the rest of the city staff. So both of those are designed to be a similar reporting structure. So,
thank you, and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for the presenter or staff? Mr. Schechter?
Yeah, maybe I missed it. I easily could have. Is there some place where this addresses infrastructure like roads, the real boring stuff, potholes, this kind of thing? I personally experienced this starting a home business, and like Tower Road, a particular part of it, tons of potholes, and I was worried about the products I had. And I'm like, oh, I can't be doing this in this location.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I don't know that the word potholes is in the document explicitly, but I do think there are a number of goals and strategies that do touch on infrastructure. Some of it is more about, you see in that goal 3, approachable. How do we make being in Commerce City an experience that everyone wants to have and participate in? It's about, making it easy to get here, making sure you don't hit a huge pothole as you're getting off 270 or something to patronize a local business. I think that Infrastructure is certainly present in the strategy, and while I can't quote the specific number of every strategy that touches on it, we heard that loud and clear. We wanted to make it easy to access local businesses for people who are coming in from other places. We wanted to facilitate spending by people who are, sure, residents, but also people who are not residents and who choose to come here for events and things like that. So I think that's fully consistent with and definitely included in a number of the actions that are in the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you very much for being here in front of us today. It was nice to see you again, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
At this time, do any members of the public wish to provide comments on this item? Yes.
Timothy Hoskins, 6380 East 78th Avenue, Commerce City, Colorado, 80022. I just wanted to point out the draft that was posted on the city website. The Appendix A and Appendix B was just completely blank and missing any information. And then the, was it Section 1.3? There were just some minor differences, but from the published version on the draft on the city's website versus what's presented here tonight. That's all I added. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Any additional comments? Is there anyone attending virtually tonight who wishes to speak?
No one signed up beforehand and no one has raised their hand to speak.
I'd like to give the applicant or the presenter the opportunity to respond just to the comment, if you choose, about the availability of the material on the, that's currently on the website. Or if that will be available for public review.
Again, I will welcome any contributions from city staff. I think the discrepancy in 1.3 was related to a comment that we received later in the week after packet submittal from the city manager's office. As I understand it, it was a minor edit, and I would have to double check to see what the specific edit was, but I think it's consistent with the spirit of what was originally included in the packet. In terms of those appendices, I believe they would be appended upon approval of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. The appendices are just other contract deliverables that we have already provided to the city, but our contract was structured in such a way that we may have delivered those last fall or earlier this year. And so the city's in receipt of them. They just haven't been attached to the version that was included in your packet.
Thank you. At this time, I will now close the public hearing for this case. Can I have a motion?
I would like to discuss this maybe before the motion. I don't know. You want to have a motion first and then discussion? Or is that sort of the way it works?
Well, let's make a motion, and then we'll
Okay.
discuss the motion, and if we need to amend the motion similar to the previous case, I suggest we go about it that way. Unless,
Okay.
since we've closed the case, the public portion of the case, let's go about it that route, unless the city attorney has any recommendation.
You can debate amongst yourselves either before or after the motion, so it's either one is fine.
Let's hear a motion and hear what's stated, and then we can discuss that point and see if we need to make any amendments or adjustments to that at that time.
Okay. I move approval of conditions. I move that the Planning Commission enter finding that the Economic Development Strategic Plan is satisfactory to the Planning Commission and recommends the City Council approve and adopt the plan with the following conditions. One, that Section 4, page 26, action item 1.3.5 be elided, removed, or edited. It's kind of dry without context, but yeah.
Is there a second?
I couldn't hear what he said after, for the conditions.
Oh, with the condition that the section, it's celebrate cultural events that are important to Commerce. This is the section. Celebrate cultural events that are important to Commerce City's diverse population, such as Hispanic Heritage Month, Mexican Independence Day, or Dia de los Muertos. My condition would be that we edit that or just remove it entirely.
I need some clarification from you. I don't know how you can do "or" on this. You're either doing one or the other. And
That's true.
including that in your motion.
Yeah, so I think actually, and I think it's a great sensibility of what's being said there. I think it could be just better. We can better word it. So I would propose maybe just ending it at diverse population and suggesting Dia de los Muertos, and then maybe some other, and some other holiday by some other group that celebrates. We have an Asian population, Chinese New Year, I don't know, something like that.
LGBTQIA+.
Maybe something, yeah. I'm sorry, that was a very rambling motion, I'm sorry.
So I ask Commissioner Schechter
Yes.
to reconsider his motion and repropose your language, just as it was pretty verbose, to a more truncated, coalesced idea, if you could.
Okay.
I think it's a little tough to digest as you were presenting it, so we
Yeah.
were going more into a discussion when we didn't get to a point of discussion.
That's
So if it
absolutely
was
true.
a more concise point you were,
All right. So I'd like to amend my motion that the condition is simply, we end that section, action 1.3.5, with a period after diverse population, period, instead of a comma. It just ends right there.
is there a second? Hearing none.
You said 1.3.5? Oh, I see what you're talking about.
Yes, on the bottom of page 26 there. Just ending the sentence at the word population.
Okay.
Will we be able to discuss this before voting?
Well, so there's two courses of actions. We can have a second, discuss it, or we can ask to reconsider, if I'm
Okay.
correct, and reconsider another motion on the,
Okay, I second it. So
Okay.
now can we discuss it?
so we have a motion from Commissioner Schechter, second from Commissioner Ingleson, so we can open this for discussion.
Okay, thank you so much for working with me. Yes, so first of all, yes, so I think, especially the vision statement, it's excellent. I really like it. It's aspirational in nature, and it's plain, actionable language, which I've been sort of like trying to really spread the word on, which is great. I don't need to go to the dictionary to look up any of the words. I'm really happy to see what the city has put together. And this is maybe a nit, but the only issue I have really is this one section here. And I think the sensibility behind it is great, but I think it actually doesn't accomplish what it seeks to. It wants to talk about our diverse population, but then it only lists holidays important to the majority group in our city. It actually does the opposite of what it is setting out to do in this sentence. And that's why I moved to remove this after the word population. That's just explanatory stuff. Then taking it on a little bit, and Commissioner Sanchez, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this. Personally, as a New Yorker from a place with many different cultures, I would like to see real cultural events like Dia de los Muertos and other Hispanic or other Latino celebrations that I don't even know about, but I'm skeptical of ones like Hispanic Heritage Month, Mexican Independence Day. I don't know that we need to celebrate Mexico, a different state. We're Americans here. I mean, I don't want to beat that too much. I think that emphasis on Mexico is a little wrong-headed. And also, I've seen some evidence that, I'll call them these sort of artificial celebrations, are poorly attended versus real ones that are actual real cultural celebrations that also I would want to go to, even though I'm not Latino. I'd like to know more about Latin American culture, Hispanic culture. So that's my take on it. That's why I feel like let's just end it at population and just sidestep naming particular things, because then we can have a big discussion. Like, yes, LGBT, et cetera, too, that's part of the diversity here. This is not diverse at all. According to this document, using its own numbers, we're a 53% Hispanic city. We are a Hispanic city. So if we want diversity, we should not list only Hispanic celebrations. Just by the numbers. Okay, go ahead.
I understand what you're saying, and I think I agree with it. We also had an amazing Juneteenth celebration, which I was part of presenting, and Derby is doing the Hispanic Heritage celebration on the 22nd, I believe it is. But the point is, we don't want to leave out all of our diverse cultures. Is that what you're trying to say? By not listing all of them, we're kind of neglecting some of them? So
I guess
if we
that's
just...
one point, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like also sometimes under the mantle of diversity, we tend to focus on one culture that we feel like this needs promotion, but we are a majority, we're a Hispanic city. I don't know. It feels like it's in poor taste to celebrate ourselves. To me, I don't know, that's who we are. So, like, as a New Yorker, I love the memories of going down to Chinatown and Little Italy on the different actual real holidays that are celebrated in these cultures, and everything is decked out, and you see the Chinese dragon and everything like that. And it's a huge event. I love that. I want to see that here. All kinds of cultures. I want us to be a place for immigrants from everywhere, if this makes sense.
It does, but those are actually real holidays that they just mentioned.
Yeah.
But there are other real holidays. So I don't want to say that we are not respecting the ones that were listed, but we want to respect more. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, okay, I'll drop.
Then I would be in agreement
yeah.
with you on your suggestion to end it with a period, and that way everyone is included if everyone is excluded.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, since you asked, a mí no le hace, I guess. To me, it doesn't matter, but I think the point is when you're reading this document, it's supposed to be flexible, but it didn't say specifically that we only celebrate these things. If you read it, it says such as. And if you've got a problem with that, then that's okay, if that's what you want to make a point of. I don't have a problem with that. It says such as, and to me, that's not limiting anything by any means. And you're correct, this is a Latino community, but not everybody knows that. And I think you need to respect that, and I think that the city as a whole needs to, I think city government understands that, but when you look at the city, if you go on the north side and you tell people that this is a Latino community, they're going to look at you like you're from outer space, perhaps. So I'm in favor of just leaving it in because it says such as, and it doesn't eliminate anything from that whole process. It doesn't change what's going on here. And I think we're picking nits when we do something like that.
That's exactly the word I used. I said this may be a nit.
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, I think you don't give the North Side enough credit. The most popular, always booked out haircutting place for guys, I know because it's hard for me to get an appointment there, is a Latino barbershop on West 104th, down at the end there. There's a lot of Latino representation, actually, in Reunion, the fancy schmancy Reunion, right next door to me, and everywhere. So, but point taken, that we do have a north-south difference here for sure.
And in the subdivision I live in,
Mike?
If you could, your microphone.
the subdivision I live in is highly Hispanic, and it's in the north.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying you've got plenty of people. I haven't seen the population breakdown for Reunion. So
Right. Oh, well,
maybe that would
Reunion-
change, maybe that could change what I'm saying, but I don't think so.
Okay. So let's tighten this up.
Oh, well, yeah, so to this, in hearing the discussion, has there been enough discussion to post this to proceed to vote on this motion? Or do we need to recommend a new motion?
I'm good.
Do we feel that there's been enough discussion to place a vote on this motion?
I feel that way.
Hearing,
Anybody else ready to vote? Or you want to hold off?
I think we have there's been enough discussion. So, let's see, if we could open electronic voting on the motion.
Just to be clear, the motion is with a period at the end.
That's
Yes,
correct.
Yes,
Of population, right?
to remove the specific language as noted and end it with the period. The motion passes, 3 yeses, 2 noes, 0 abstains. And I'd like to thank the commissioners because it's those types of spirit, it wasn't necessarily spirit, but open dialogue and discussion that actually changes things within our society. So it was a good point of order. All right. Let's see, is there any commission business to discuss at this time? Seeing none. Is there any attorney business to discuss at this time?
No, Chair.
Is there any staff business to discuss at this time or updates from staff?
Yeah, we just wanted to give you an update on what happened at the August 19th city council meeting. So Anderson Ranch, which you saw on August 6th, went through with their annexation eligibility hearing. Their hearing for their annexation and the PUD is scheduled for October 21st. And the Galatians Commons, which was the rezone from C2 to R3 that you saw on July 2nd, was approved by City Council. That's the affordable housing, if you remember that. And then the 7th Avenue right-of-way vacation, which is north of 84th Avenue, that you also saw on July 2nd, that also was approved by council.
Thank you. The time is now 8 o'clock on the dot, and the meeting is now adjourned.
Oh, my gravy. I was like.